Hello everyone, my name is Leon Quest. So today we're going to be talking about communication flow. So communication is a very important life skills, right? You use it almost everywhere you go. When you're in school, when you're in public transportation, when you're going out in a restaurant, when you're going shopping, and even in the thing where you probably do from 9 to 5 every day, which is work. In our working environment or in almost every public environment, communication is key. If you do not have communication skills, there are going to be a lot of problems regarding communication and regarding the working like status of it. So today we're going to be talking briefly through the working communications and the communication flow. So there are four main types of communication in a workforce, and it's divided into two groups. First is about the timing of it, and second group is about the individuals that receive the conversation. So let's start with the very first section, which is synchronous and asynchronous. So what is synchronous? Synchronous is the type of communication where you're in sync with every other people. So let's say these forms of communication could happen in, for example, webinars, group training, meetings, things like that. So when people are communication in front of each other, a group of people, probably more than two, communicates with each other and engage with each other continuously at the same time. And so what is the benefit of synchronous communication is that there's going to be first simple communication. You do not have to go through different platforms of communication. You do not have to go back and forth to tell somebody. And secondly is that it's going to be more effective and more accurate too. Have you ever tell your friend, okay, hey, can you go tell friend B that I want to give them a juice box? And so that friend could go to friend B and say, oh, she wants to give you something, I'm not sure, maybe something dangerous, I don't know. So you guys can see how does that, first is that it's less accurate, and secondly it's way much more complex and way much more inefficient, right? So that is why in the scenarios, synchronous communication is very beneficial, because it is when you benefit. First is that it's very simple, it's very effective, and secondly it's very accurate, and it works best when you're in a working system where there's lots of people or when there's a lot of information that are important for you to take note of. But secondly is asynchronous communication. This is the opposite of synchronous communication. That is when, for example, it could be, let's say, a one-on-one meeting, or a private email, or a phone call, or like WhatsApp chat. Those things are what we call as asynchronous. So that is when you talk individually with a person. Now the benefits of this is that first, you're gonna have more custom and tailored message. So let's say for person A, you might shift your approach in a friendly way, but for person B, you may shift your approach in a very polite and serious way. So that is when you're more likely going to be able to juggle with different types of communication. But secondly is that it's also going to allow you to have eye contact, because usually when you're in the situation where you're communication with only one people, so it's just you and the other people, that's when you can notice their body language, you can notice the language signs, things like that. That is way much more effective when you're wanting to talk about something that's very serious, etc. And that is when asynchronous communication is very important. But secondly comes to the individuals that receive the communication from you. First is vertical, which is when you communicate with either your superior, so the people that works above you, or your subordinate, which are people that are under you. So maybe you can talk with your boss, that is when you talk with your superior, or you can talk with a trainee, which is your subordinate. So this form of communication is very important, because when you're able to like identify who are you talking to. Are they superior or are they like subordinate? That's when you can shift your approach, right? For superior, you want to sound more polite, more work ethic, and more like serious with your job. But for superior, you might want to be more friendly, more helpful, or more easy on them. So it's up to the vertical position for you to be able to shift your your communication style. But secondly is horizontal communication, which is when you communicate with your similar positions. So let's say you communicate with your colleague, you communicate with someone that's on the same team of yours, or you can communicate with somebody who's your working partner. So that is when you want to shift your voice into something more friendly, more friend-like, more casual, yet still keep the working ethic going. So why is establishing and recognizing these 4 types of communication important? First is that it helps your words to be way more effective and way more accurate. And secondly, it's going to keep the working ethics nice and make sure that your relationship with your co-workers does not get destroyed and your reputation stays safe too. So again, in a workplace environment, especially in a public part as like this where you work from 9 to 5 every day, it's very important that you understand the communication flow and the different types of communication, which are synchronous, asynchronous, vertical, and horizontal. Thank you for listening and goodbye.